What made you realize you are a bad human being? When I was 10, my parents shared the news that we'd be going on vacation that summer. This was my first vacation and I was ecstatic. When I got to school the following day, I told my best friend. He asked when I'd be going, I told him, and he told me that this would mean I'd miss his birthday party. This party was something he had been talking about for the last month. I replied in the shittiest way possible with something like, I don't care, I'm going on vacation. He looked pretty hurt by that one and ended up having his parents bumping his birthday ahead by a couple of weeks so I could attend. I still feel bad about that one. Sad face.
Missing a friend's birthday for a vacation is tough. It's good that his parents adjusted the date, but it's clear that the way you responded left a mark. We all mess up sometimes, especially as kids. It's a learning experience in friendship and consideration.
When I was around 8 or so and driving somewhere with my mom, there was a turtle in the middle of the road, so we stopped and picked it up and took it home. We put it outside on our fenced-in porch in the backyard and let it wander. I remember seeing some carrot lying on the ground and thinking, what the hell is this dirty carrot doing here? So I picked it up and chucked it over the fence and into the woods. My mom had seen this and told me that the carrot was the turtle's food. Now I'm almost 25, and to this day I still feel like a POS for throwing that turtle's dinner over the fence like a jackass.
It's a classic kid moment, thinking you're doing the right thing. You didn't know it was food. A lot of us have those times where we realize later what we did. It sticks with us, but it's just part of growing up. It's good you're reflecting on it now. You probably learned something from that experience.
Sitting at a table with friends at college when a girl and her friend join us cause she knew one of my friends. Girl's a real jerk to everyone. She hones in on my good friend who is insecure. Nervous laughter from everyone, so she goes harder. I stop her and, half-jokingly say, wow, good one. You want a medal or a chest to pin it on? She was seriously flat as a board. Girl stands up crying and runs out of the building. Turn to everyone cause no idea how that should be the reaction. Friends tell me, she had breast cancer when she was 16 and had to have them removed. Only happened a few years ago. Nice.
You really didn't see that coming. It's hard to gauge someone's story just by how they act in the moment. Her reaction was way off from what you thought would happen. Makes you wonder about people's struggles that aren't obvious. Now you're left trying to process that situation and the impact of your words.
So we have these stink bugs that get into our house every day. Well, it's usually just one at a time, and my 4-year-old decides he needs a pet stink bug, names him Little Lobster, carries him around and stuff. Well, I let Little Lobster outside to play. It's winter and very cold here in Michigan, so Little Lobster isn't lasting long. Anyways, next day a new stink bug will inevitably show up and oh hey, Little Lobster is back to play. Until I throw him outside to die, so I realized every day I kill my kid's pet without him realizing it. It's like the movie The Prestige outside the back door with all those dead little lobsters. So yeah, we should probably get a dog.
That's a unique situation. Having a pet that keeps dying each day sounds pretty rough for a kid. It's interesting how kids can form attachments quickly, even to bugs.
I said in an argument with my ex I didn't believe he ever cared about me because of the way he broke up with me. He went quiet a while, then started digging in a box and wouldn't tell me what he was looking for. Eventually he brought out a little black box full of paper and other bits and threw the stuff in it at me. It was receipts from our dates, cinema tickets for films we'd been to, the card labels off of Christmas presents and all sorts. All the little keepsakes. He's a twat, and he's upset me more than he will ever know, but that made me break down in tears. It's all stuff I thought he'd have thrown in a bin, never stuff he'd have kept to remember me with.
Those little bits can mean a lot, even when the relationship didn't go well. It sounds like there was more to him than you thought. It's understandable to feel overwhelmed, even if he upset you. Emotions can be tricky. It's just tough when things aren't what they seem.
When I was around 15, I met a girl online and we quickly fell in love, as hormonal teenagers are prone to do. Her parents went away during the school summer break, leaving her home alone for a while, and she invited me to come and stay with her as our first face-to-face meeting. I took the train down to where she lived, but on arrival my heart sank. Even though I'd seen pictures of her, she didn't really resemble the image my love-struck 15-year-old mind had built up. Mutual awkwardness and disappointment became the theme of our first day together, so much so that I decided that, not only was I going to go back home the very next day, I think I was supposed to stay for a whole week, but I didn't want to see or speak to her again. Just before I left, I crept into her room and erased my number from her phone. Then it occurred to me that she had an inbox full of text messages from my number, so I had to re-creep into her room and stealthily delete all of those, thus deleting myself from her life. I left and never heard from her again, although she did have my email address. That was about 17 years ago, and I still feel very shitty about what I did. Emily, I'm sorry.
That's a rough experience. It happens when the reality doesn't match expectations. It's tough to face that awkwardness, especially for a first meet. Deleting your number and messages is quite the move, but it sounds like you were just trying to cut ties quickly. It's normal to reflect on past actions, but it was a long time ago.
I got into a fight with my boyfriend. Without going into details, he was in the wrong. He was a notorious instigator. One day, we were arguing and it escalated, and then I just lost it and I smacked him. You have no idea how bad I still feel about that. He took that opportunity to use the hit and tell everyone that his girlfriend hit him all the time and that I constantly attacked him. It wasn't true, but it didn't make me feel any better about the incident. He's right about that, there is a double standard. I never hit anyone again. He was arrested for trying to kill someone a few months ago, so that makes me feel a little less bad. I won't lie, there's something about seeing your ex in the news after he tries to stab someone in public, that makes you think, gee, I really don't feel so bad about smacking him anymore. But I'm still not proud of it.
It sounds like that situation was really tough for you. Sometimes, people show their true colors. Just focus on moving forward from here.
Was having a chat with my brother, sister, and mother about names for kids. Promptly say that I don't like the idea of naming my kid after a family member, but if I did it would be my father's name. At the end of this rambling, mildly insulting speech I look straight at my mom and say, because I love Dad. Immediately realized that implied that I didn't love my mother enough to name my kids after her. I tried retracing my steps and covering up my mistake. She laughed and joked about it, but her face showed that she was pretty hurt. Broke my heart that I could be that careless. That woman's done nothing but good for me.
Family conversations can get complicated, especially when it comes to names. It's good that you recognize how your words affected her. That shows you care.
7th grade. Social studies. Big classroom in class, like 60 plus. I sat in back, easily 60 feet back from the front of the class where Brandon, who was soft-spoken, nerdy, and not yet out of the closet, was giving a report to the class. Suddenly, he breaks into a fit of laughter, like really bad case of the giggles where he can't stop. Laughter is contagious, so I start audibly laughing out loud too, cause it's funny, like when people break on SNL. The teacher excuses him to go back to his seat as Brandon couldn't carry on, and he walks, laughing, to the back of the class where he sits just behind me. Next to me, Herman, who is kind of dick to everybody / borderline bully, glares at me and in low voice through his teeth, tells me to fucking quit it, dude. I'm baffled and look up to see no one else laughing in the class as Brandon brushes past my desk, crying. Apparently, Brandon actually was so overcome by nerves giving his report he started crying in front of our huge class, and I laughed out loud at his pain. So much so that the guy who was generally a dick to everyone had to tell me to stop being a dick. Sorry, Brandon, I thought we were laughing.
That's a rough moment. It's interesting how laughter can come off as support, or be misunderstood. It sounds like you thought Brandon was just having a funny moment, but he was actually feeling overwhelmed. It's a bummer when you realize the context too late. Herman's response shows how everyone can see things differently. It's a tough lesson in empathy, I guess.
After graduating college, I spent the summer backpacking around the world. It was the most amazing thing I had ever done. I was kind of shy before, but the experience gave me a newfound confidence. Once I was back home, I was a hit at bars, regaling new friends with stories, and was finally successful with attracting the opposite sex. I was having the time of my life. While I was gone, my best friend's boyfriend overdosed and died at Bonnaroo. A little backstory: we became friends because she put me back together after a breakup. Stayed with me and cooked for me, but did I return the favor when I came home? No, uneasy face. I was too busy having the time of my life. Shortly after I got home, she crashed her car and got a DUI. She was in a downward spiral and I ignored her. We were working a shift together after that and I, still in euphoria from the night before, said to her, "I can't believe how my life keeps getting better and better and yours just gets worse." I didn't realize what I had said until months later. It's been years and I still think back on that moment. I could have been there for her, but I was just a selfish piece of shit. TLDR, best friend's boyfriend died during the best summer of my life and I was a piece of shit.
It's rough how your summer went from amazing to that heavy moment. That regret about what you said really sticks though. It shows how quickly things can shift. It's hard dealing with what you didn't do, but it sounds like you learned from it.
I moved across country after I graduated college because I was going nuts staying in my hometown. I got a job working at a nightclub being a hostess to help supplement my internship income. My mom and sister came out to visit for a couple days. The night they got into town, I told them I'd be working because I was on schedule. College friends were going out that night and a bunch of friends I hadn't seen since graduation would be there. I went up to work and they said they wouldn't need me. I decided to go out with my friends and get dinner and drinks, figuring I'd see my mom and sis the next day, as planned. Of course, they showed up to the club and were told I wasn't working that night. Getting that phone call made me feel like a real piece of shit.
You were just trying to enjoy time with your friends after college. It's understandable wanting to balance work and personal life, but it's rough when family expectations don't match up. Hopefully it all worked out with your mom and sister after that night.
I was very sheltered as a kid. I went to a private Christian elementary and middle school with 16 people in my 8th grade class. When I was in 9th grade, I went to my first public school. No one knew me, so I felt like I had to be cool. One day a friend of mine mentioned that her cousin was gay. I had never met a gay person before. I was genuinely curious if he was just as they appear on TV. So I asked her who he was, wanting to get the chance to meet him. She asked why I wanted to know who he was. Trying to be cool and not like I was genuinely curious, I replied, "So I can make fun of him." The girl sitting in front of me, who I had never heard say a word, just turned around and said, "You're a dick." It was the first and last thing she ever said to me. I've never felt like more of a piece of shit in my life than that moment.
The comment from that girl seems like it hit hard, probably made you reflect on your behavior. It's a tough lesson about being yourself versus trying to impress others.
Short back history, I volunteered, as a teenager, for a special needs school. This was for extra and credit program. I was reading a storybook, it was an Arthur book, if that matters, to a special needs kid, approximate 15. I messed up while reading out loud and automatically blurred out, "I'm retarded." The look of utter happiness on that boy's face was soul crushing as he happily jumps up and down pointing at himself. Me too. Me too. If I didn't feel like such a huge piece of shit, I would have laughed, I suppose.
It sounds like a tough moment. You were trying to help, and then that slip happened. It's clear the kid found joy in your mistake, which is something. You were feeling bad, but he connected with you in a way. Sometimes, you just have to roll with it and take it for what it is.
Well, in the 2nd grade, we had a big textbook with a bunch of short stories. And every week or so our homework was to read a story to our parents. So one week, I read this story about this dude named Charles who flew this prop plane over the Atlantic Ocean or whatever to my mom. Yada yada. The next week, time to do homework again. This time it's Dad. I'm flipping through the book about to read some story about some little girl with a scarf in the winter, some bullshit, but I happen to open directly to the page of the previous story. My dad sees it, and, as a pilot, his face lights up. Charles Lindbergh. Wow, he flew the Spirit of St. Louis across the ocean. He's a hero. Nah Dad, it's some story about Cindy whatever and her scarf. Laughing face, dash. Straight face, oh, okay. Go ahead. I felt like such a douche for taking that look of excitement off my dad's face. I don't think I've ever heard him say, "He's a hero," like that. I should have just lied and read the story. I still feel like a piece of shit.
It sounds like a pretty classic moment. You were just trying to do your homework, but it led to an unexpected disappointment. It can be tough when you realize you're letting someone down, especially a parent who's excited about something. We all have moments where we think we could have done better, but it's just part of growing up and learning. Was driving on a winding road on my way to a job on the countryside when I hit a bird with the car.
Stopped the car briefly and saw in my rearview that it was flapping around until it just sat still in the middle of the road, probably trying to recover from the beating it had taken. I considered stepping out of my car and move the poor bird to the side of the road so it wouldn't get hit by another car, but remembered that flock-living birds can get expelled by their flock if they carry an unknown scent. I also figured that this was far off in the countryside in Sweden, and the likelihood of another car passing by any time soon was close to none. I was on my way back home about an hour and a half later. My meeting with the client had been a huge success, so I was in a great mood, singing to the radio, and was probably driving a bit over the limit. I drove up a small crest, and on the other side was the same fucking bird sitting in the middle of the road exactly where I left it. I had totally forgotten about it. It was turned towards me, and I swear it looked me straight in the eyes, silently cursing at me in its creepy bird language as I inevitably drove straight over it for the second time. Once again I could see the bird being slammed to the asphalt numerous times in my rearview mirror before disappearing down the slope into the woods. I'm entirely convinced this bird will dedicate his afterlife to haunting me from the other side for the rest of my life.
That's a rough situation. Hitting the same bird twice is wild. It's kind of strange to think about how animals might react to people. The idea of it haunting you is a bit much, but I get it. It's hard not to feel guilty after something like that, especially when you tried to help initially. Just hope the bird is okay, wherever it ended up.
Recently, I was running a bit late to work one morning. I had the music blaring and was slightly tailgating the car in front of me. He was going above the posted limit, but still, not fast enough for a piece of shit that's late to work. Anyway, we arrived at a red light of a four-way intersection. It seemed to take forever. When the light finally turned green, I allowed the courtesy 3 seconds before giving the courtesy light's green honk. No reaction. I waited a couple more seconds and I gave a double honk. The guy looked up at me in his rear view mirror, but still no reaction. I finally lose my patience and I lay on the horn for a good 8 to 10 seconds straight. He looks back up and throws his hands up. I say fuck it, and swerve to the right of him into the right turn only lane. As I'm about to drive across the intersection in my fit of road rage, I see an ambulance speeding towards me with its lights on. I had to slam on the brakes as the ambulance driver was making a left turn in front of me. I didn't see it because I was so close behind the driver, and I didn't hear it because of my loud music. Not my proudest moment. Lesson learned.
This story highlights how road rage can make you blind to your surroundings. The impatience with the other driver is relatable, but it can lead to dangerous situations, like almost colliding with an ambulance. It's a reminder to take a breather and stay aware while driving, even when you're in a hurry. Not everything should be reacted to immediately, especially when safety is at stake.
This seems so small, but I was so angry at myself for doing this. Happened when I was in grade 7, I think. So one of our assignments was to write a short story, and we had to write it by hand. It was the day that we were supposed to hand it in, and I was sitting next to a girl. There was what I thought was just scrap bits of paper lying on the desk, so I started doodling on it just random stuff with a texter. After a while of this I realized the paper I had been drawing on was actually the handwritten assignment of the girl I was sitting next to. I got in trouble and the teacher kept asking me why I vandalized that girl's assignment loudly in front of the entire class, but I couldn't verbalize that it was an accident and I just looked like a massive dickhead, felt so guilty.
It's interesting how small moments can stick with you. Accidentally ruining someone else's work is awkward, especially in front of a class. It's tough when you can't express what really happened. That guilt can linger longer than the incident itself. At least you learned something from it, right? It's one of those experiences that shape you, even if it feels minor in the grand scheme of things.